tell you about my exploration of a shorter Finnegans Wake, and I hope this is working. By the way, it says we have a few people online, and okay, so I'm gonna keep going. If anyone wants to comment and let me know if you can hear, that'd be great. But otherwise, I'll just continue on for hours, even if this is not actually recording. All right, so a shorter Finnegans Wake. I guess I should look at my notes because I feel like I'm probably jumping over a lot of things. Oh yeah, so I have a cool idea for next week's or next time's, probably not next week, next time's episode. But oh wow, I have a lot of material that I totally forgot. Okay, so, okay, I'm gonna start over. So just rewind and we'll forget everything I said. So I wanted to pick up with, there was some comments on the comments about the chat and so on for this video series, and like I'm totally of the for the most part, as long as people are not like yelling at me or yelling at other people in a very negative way, I'm okay with you guys talking about, if you guys can argue politely, or you can argue with me, you can argue with each other, as long as you keep it polite. Otherwise, I've never banned anyone from a from a chat, but apparently I have that ability. So I would rather not have to use it. And I think for the most part, you guys are doing great. And comment away, leave whatever wild theories you have about Finnegans Wake. But I was mentioning this because I was thinking about different emergent media of the 21st century. What are the new media forms that have emerged? And I think both the comment section and its cousin, I guess, the chat, whatever that's called, just the chat, are kind of media forms in a sense, because they have they weren't really around in the 20th century. I mean, we had like really basic text type forums in the 20th century, but I think the way that like comments get upvoted now, it's sort of like a democracy in ways, but it has kind of the same weaknesses of democracy in that it's subject to populism. And you look at a lot of the times the top comment, just in any video, you look at the top comment, not in my videos because you guys are all so smart and I get great comments, but like some video that you don't want to watch, whatever's popular. You look at the top comment, and maybe you'll go look just to see what the top comment is. But it's usually the most boring. Okay, every now and then there's some good wit. I admit that, but a lot of times there's just really the most banal and obvious thing that people say, and it gets upvoted and it makes it to the top, and you're like, what? That's why I'm comparing it to democracy. Anyways, so that's one form of emergent media. What else? I find as I'm traveling around the world, because I've been traveling since August, and cities, I mean, to me, are like sort of the largest media form that a person can really comprehend in one instant. And going from city to city and country to country has kind of given me a interesting take on cities as a texture and a media form. Maybe that's all I wanted to say about that right now. Otherwise, we'll be all here all night as I babble away about anything. I haven't talked too much about Giambattista Vico, the new science, and the Viconian cycle that is used in Finnegans Wake, because I don't. I'm just gonna. So let me see if I can remember off the top of my head what it is. So I want to say it's 4 parts. Is that right? I feel like the first part is. And again, feel free to correct me, or I'll correct myself in future videos. But I am going to read the new science at some point, probably this year. And but the first part I want to say is like rule by like the gods, like it's like based on like a theocracy. And then the second part is more like, I don't know if it's like kings, or priests, or just like some powerful officials mediating, um, acting as mediums for the gods. And then is the third part like a more like a democracy, and then the fourth part is kind of like the collapse and the recirculation. That's just kind of like my memory of it is. I'll explain it much better, I'm sure, in future videos. But anyways, I kind of mentioned that now because, um, yeah, I was going to talk about magic and some other things, but I'll talk about that in a future video. I feel like I need graphics for this, and I didn't prepare. So moving onward, I have a few quotes I wanted to share with you guys that I found very interesting, that maybe you will too, or maybe not. What are these quotes, Adam? Tell us as you slide through your notes. Let's see. So I was reading this essay. I did a book review a few months ago, I think, about this novel by Grant Morrison called Luda, and I was kind of negative on it. I mean, I wasn't overall that happy with the book. And oh, great, thank you, White Russian Dolls. I was just checking in on my chat. So yeah, but I was talking about, what was I talking about? Luda. And I was kind of in that book review, I was kind of down on that novel and saying like, I didn't feel it was that great. But I feel like I don't want you to get the impression that I totally don't like Grant Morrison's writing, because he's had a big influence on me. But I was something that I've read recently by him that I did like a lot is this nonfiction piece. It's like a 3-part series that I'll link to when I finish this episode, and in the comments or something I'll put all the links. But it's called The Word and the Fool. If you don't want to wait for it, it's like a 3-part thing that he published on his Substack called Xanadu. But anyways, I'm just going to read this quote, and because you can decide whether you think it's interesting and relevant to Finnegans Wake. But I think it is. Actually, I thought it was. I haven't read it in a few weeks, so I don't know what the quote is. I'm going to be kind of surprised too as I read it. So here's the quote from The Word and the Fool by Grant Morrison. Without going so far as to suggest everything is waiting to talk to us directly, in a wise-ass New Jersey accent, one hopes, it's not too far-fetched to suggest that everything has something to tell us. Everywhere we look, there is something to learn, a fractal, infinite profusion of potential subject-to-object relationships, yielding the kind of knowledge about our surroundings that we love to harvest and preserve, the kind of knowledge that brings meaning to our lives. The complexity of our neural architecture provides us with access to a sophisticated, holographic conscious self-awareness, which enables us to stand back and look at ourselves from a distance that is purely conceptual. Our self-awareness allows us access to higher dimensions. We can see ourselves in the mirror just by closing our eyes. We can age or de-age our faces. Using our mind's eye, we can see ourselves from above, in a crowd, from space. We can look back in time and imagine, then make the future. Seeing patterns in apparent chaos seems to give us immense pleasure. So that's the end of the quote. And yeah, I can see how this relates to Finnegans Wake. Good quote, previous me finding this. Yeah, seeking patterns in apparent chaos, because I think that's what people get when they usually pick up first Finnegans Wake. They look at it and there's just so much chaos, so much unknown, and but oh yeah, so okay, so here, I wrote some notes. I just follow my notes. And so after this, I wrote, "Isn't this why we read Finnegans Wake?" Oh, and then I talked about, okay, so I'm in Thailand right now, and I've been here before, but I'm connecting this to Finnegans Wake because this is the first time I've really tried to learn the language here. And it feels like I'm in a different country from the previous times that I was here, because it's just that different. And I feel like I understand the mind space of this country now in a way that I never did before. So I think that's, I've talked about language learning, and I think language is are perhaps the ultimate way of seeing patterns in apparent chaos, the way, a dog can't really understand what we're saying. But it's so exciting when you do. It's just like, so I think that's what Joyce wanted with Finnegans Wake, since he learned languages over and over throughout his life, or maybe not throughout his life, maybe through maybe like 30. I feel like after that, his eyes were deteriorating. I don't think he was studying much. He had like a family to write. He had a family to take care of. He had books to write. So I don't think he was. I feel like most of his studies happened like when he was younger. But that experience is something that he carried with him throughout his life. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that, I guess. And no, that's not all I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say was that I got marijuana for the first time in over a year, and I think that has helped me as I've read Finnegans Wake, because I've talked about this before, but I think when you are in that state, it just makes more sense. Like I read it more slowly, and I see every word has meaning. So I'm not saying you have to do marijuana or alcohol or whatever to enjoy Finnegans Wake. I'm just saying that I just feel like I get it more when maybe it's because I'm reading that Burgess book, the Shorter Finnegans Wake, or maybe it's just because I'm growing more familiar with Finnegans Wake. But I don't know. I feel like there's some kind of connection between marijuana and language learning and language in general. But who knows? Anyways, yeah. I also was talking about in my notes about how I feel like every language that I've studied has a different personality, and I think maybe that's why I like Thai's, because its personality is very different from the other languages that I've tried to learn. There's tones in it, and you got to learn these tones in it. It's in every word, so it's very musical. I think as a musician, I appreciate it and love it, and yeah. So if you want an exciting challenge, Thai language has been probably the most difficult language I've studied. I can't think of anything close. I mean, I've done like German, Latin, Japanese, Mandarin. Like I've tried difficult languages, Arabic, Hebrew. Thai is more difficult. It's like, yeah. So, anyways, if you guys are into real challenges, give it a try. So, anyways, I found a playlist that I mentioned called "Music in Finnegans Wake," and I don't know the accuracy of this playlist. I don't know, because I don't know Finnegans Wake enough, but I do think music is going to be like a major thing that I'm going to talk about in Finnegans Wake, because I like music, and why not? There's so many different angles to approach the book that I think I like this format for my channel, basically because it allows me to talk about anything and just use Finnegans Wake as a stepping stone. The average reader. Oh, here's another quote. Okay, here's a quote from Joyce. That book. Actually, that book is not just about Finnegans Wake. It's about Joyce's all of his books, and I feel like it's kind of aimed at maybe a lower intermediate level reader of Joyce, somebody who has a pretty good familiarity already of the books. So here's a quote, though. I don't know what it is. Let's see what it says. The average reader does not want to get outside life, to view it. Let me start again. The average reader does not want to get outside life, to view it detachedly and indifferently. He requires the illusion of being more deeply involved in it. And then I have another quote, but I don't know if it's... What is this quote? Time remains the enemy. Time remains the enemy. History must be spatialized. How? By seeing it as a circle, a wheel, perpetually turning, the same events recurring again and again. Oh, okay, so this is another quote from Joyce. I didn't format my notes very well. So yeah, this is the idea of history recurring again and again. So I've been thinking about this a lot, in the sense that the book does talk about a cycle that recurs or reinitiates itself or re-patterns through history somehow. And I was trying to think, I was seeing kind of two different possibilities with what this might mean. Like, it could mean that, society and technology build up, and then, we have a nuclear war or something, or a disease that kills everyone, and suddenly, like, everyone's taken back to primitive life again, and we have to start and like rebuild history from scratch. That's one possibility. But another possibility is that we kind of penetrate the dimensionality of something. We enter a new realm of using our minds, and in this new place, it's not that we've become primitive, it's that we're not used to this new dimension. So when we first inhabit it, we go through the same pattern, this pattern that Vico and describes and that Joyce uses. That's what I'm seeing. So like, it's not so much that we get torn back to simplicity; it's that we move our consciousness in a different place where we have to kind of re-experience things as that level of development. Yeah, so that was an idea. Notes. Do I have any? This may be a short episode. We'll see. I did notice that reading it aloud is a lot easier to make sense of it. Maybe it's the slower pace, or maybe it's that you hear the audio. It's like the musical quality of the text. In that quote, though, that Burgess says, by seeing history, that it must be spatialized, that it's seeing it as a circle, a wheel. And I was thinking about the way media works, like almost from the earliest stories that humans made that we know of. There's like this thing of a way of conceiving time as something that, for example, like in Oedipus Rex, there's this prediction that he's going to kill his father and marry his mother, and that allows him to see fate as this thing that has already happened and that's locked into place. So almost from the beginning, like there's this view that the future is like out there, is spatialized, and it's almost like part of our storytelling. So I wonder, like, is it actually part of our universe, or is it just the way that we, the media that we've created, like some bias of the media itself, and that it's not necessarily the case? And or by using language, are we locking ourselves into these patterns? Is that what's making this framework that is like eternalism that shows up in books like Kurt Vonnegut and Alan Moore and so on? So you can go back to like Sophocles, or a lot of early myths. They'll have prophecies. They'll have the idea of fate and destiny is sort of creating what is going to allow this idea of eternalism to come into being. So that implication that when time is a place, when the future is a place that you will eventually arrive at, that it is kind of locked already there. But is that actually the case, or is it just a bias of our language and media? Yeah, so so another thing I found that I recently was kind of interesting was, well, this is actually I'm trying to remember which of the Anthony Burgess books. It's either in Rejoice or the other one, but there's a part where he takes a section from Anna Olivia Pluribel as it was first published in, I believe, 1924 in a magazine. I don't remember the magazine's name, but it's an earlier version basically, and Joyce would revise it several times, and each time it would, like, the original text was not that difficult to read. It was almost like standard English. And then he begins to pun more and more, and he almost seems to delight in making it sound less like it originally sounded, and so that you're only going to be able to see it through a fog, or maybe recognize the pattern of the language. I noticed, like when I study different languages, like English, I can turn the volume down so much lower than if I hear something in another language. I need to have it really loud. It's like I don't think my ears are better when I'm hearing English. I think what's happening is that my brain is so used to the patterns of the sounds and the shape of the sentences that I can kind of fill in the blanks. Whereas with a language I don't know well, I have to hear it louder and hear every little nuance because my brain isn't used to it. Um, I don't know. I don't think I have anything more to say this week, you guys. I'm enjoying the shorter Finnegans Wake, but I want to read it more. And one thing I've gotten to in the shorter Finnegans Wake is this ballad that is called the Ballad of Perce O'Reilly, and it's fascinating. I think it's a good short section that I would like to explore more and unpack because I think it has a lot to say about Finnegans Wake as a whole. But yeah, I think that may be its own topic. So if nobody else has any comments this week or anything, I don't know if this time works for you guys. Like I said, I'm in Thailand and it is 10:36 right now, and I know it's kind of early in some parts of America, so maybe I don't know. We'll see. But thank you if you did tune in. If not, see you in the next one at some point. Bye.